Welcome to the ODP cast, the podcast all things ODP. With this podcast, we will attempt to inspire and educate and hopefully get a few laughs along the way. We'll be covering many different topics relating to the profession, such as what's new, some around education, some around research, and many, many more. We'll also be doing some reaction videos to some of the funny videos that we've seen on the internet, so make sure to follow us on YouTube so that you can see what we see. Tune in to get updates, get involved by following us are at ODP Show across all major social media platforms, and remember to save this podcast to keep up to date with myself and our many guests as we add a little Yorkshire twang to the fantastic profession that is operating department practice.
Welcome to episode 7 of the ODP cast. It's ODP day.
It's ODP day.
Woo! Voting for me.
But actually, because we are highly skilled, highly trained, know what we're doing, I think it's good to just remind people that it's a very caring profession.
What do you think influences the theatre culture in that ability to be able to speak up, and how do you think that is connected to safety?
Take your patient, and if that was your mum, father, brother, grandparent, doesn't matter, someone close to your heart, how would you want them to be treated?
Always listen to your ODP because they know what's going to happen.
So if I make this change, how is it going to impact on care? How is it going to impact on safety?
Those little things don't take any time whatsoever.
We talk about reflection all the time at university. The students think, I'm never going to need to reflect again. I always say there's a benefit in speaking up, whether you're right or wrong.
So
there we go.
All the ODP students out there wondering why we spend hours teaching you law, ethics, guidance and stuff like that. That's why.
My next question is what sort of role does reflective practice play in relation to safety and care?
The absence of psychological safety is one of the big causes of errors.
How do we maintain compassion, care and safety in a fast-paced, task-driven environment? Hello, welcome to episode 7 of the ODP cast. It's ODP day.
It's ODP day.
Woo! Voting for me. Has anybody got any fine memories of ODP day? What have you done before?
Oh, mate. Well, there's only been 4?
There's not been that many, has there? There's not been that many.
The first one was in 2017.
We got some balloons done once that said National ODP Day.
Did you?
Yeah.
At the trust I worked at the time, we got the little the tokens for the trolley tokens made, and they had
that's actually really handy.
and I spent about at least a day going through the timeline of history of ODP and create a little timeline to put out on thing and set it all up. And then I was in Bali for ODP Day, the first ever ODP Day. So I celebrated the first ever ODP Day by a pool in Bali.
Nice. Very nice. Well, we can't really top that, can we?
Hey, I don't know. I got a little pin badge that said ODP's Rock, #ODP Day.
There we go.
Nah.
I didn't get any of these gifts.
Gotta set it up yourself. Yeah. So, introduction. So, who have we got on the panel today? Shall we start your end, sir?
My name is Brian. I'm a lecturer here at Sheffield Hallam for ODP, and I'm also an anaesthetic associate part-time.
Me? Yeah. I'm Jane. I'm one of the lecturers. I only started a couple of months ago, so it's still relatively new. But yeah, I'm really enjoying it so far.
I'm Jenny, senior lecturer for ODP at Sheffield Hallam as well. You've seen me before.
I'm Chris. I'm one of the senior lecturers at
Sheffield
Hallam University for our ODP programme. So that's the first time I can say senior on the podcast. So I'm now officially a senior lecturer.
Just like juniors at the end.
That's why we
together.
That's
just a
segregation.
A natural divide. What's changed since the last podcast? Quite a lot. Jade, you've come to join us now within the team.
I have, yeah.
We've known each other a while, haven't we?
Yeah, we qualified and trained together, didn't we?
We did.
It was a really long time ago now.
Well, it was nearly...
Don't tell them that our age.
Nearly 10 years ago now, Jade.
It was, I know.
Wow,
time flies,
yeah. What's new with you, Jenny?
Exciting things. We've got a new puppy, Winston, little bundle of energy. But yeah, it's lovely, nice and fun.
So, the theme of the National ODP Day is committed to care, committed to safety. So what's your takeaway from that? How do you perceive the tagline for this year and the theme of this year's National ODP Day?
Well, I think it's good to just remind people that it's a very caring profession, and I think a lot of people ODP when as like the first word they would like career they would think of. But just in our day-to-day, everything that we do involves a lot of like personal care and looking out for the pressure sores, for example, make sure the patient's comfortable, protect them from nerve injuries. There's just so many different things that we actually do and things that are in kind of in play that tries to prevent anything like this. So,
essentially, we're their advocate for
Yeah.
when they're at their most vulnerable. They are completely out of their own control, and we have to be the people that support them, advocate for them, ensure that everything that they've ever wanted is being met. So, and that includes that care and safety element of it.
I think it's very easy to forget how the profession is so caring sometimes because you don't get your thank yous that you would in other aspects of healthcare when you're caring for someone on
The
their
boxes of chocolates that go around the ward and never see the light of day in theatres for patients.
yeah, that's true.
And it's so true, but then actually one of the things you have to remind yourself is every decision we make in that periodic environment is to care for that patient or to deliver a high standard of care for that patient.
Yeah, and I think just because obviously it isn't recognised so much by the patient because they are voiceless at the time and we're acting as their voice, I think it's hard for them to actually see and for outsiders to see what actually happens, but it's there and it's always happening and it's just a part of our everyday.
I think that the safety thing as well, because anaesthesia surgery is extremely safe. Obviously, it varies a lot, but if, for us in the environment, it's extremely risky. Like there's loads of electric stuff, there's lots of water, there's cables, there's it's a very dangerous environment for the staff. But a patient undergoing surgery, it's also really quite a perilous thing if you actually stop and think about what we do. We render someone unconscious perhaps and stop them breathing and all those things, but it's on one hand extremely dangerous, but because of all the work and the things that we do, it's extraordinarily safe as well.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a paradox.
That's it. We're doing like you're saying, quite serious and quite potentially dangerous things, but actually because we are highly skilled, highly trained, know what we're doing, that safety and that care that we're providing is almost inherent in what we do on a day-to-day basis.
And I think it's really important to remember that sometimes what we do, if it's not done appropriately, isn't safe. So like if you're not following policy or you're not following guidance, you could potentially risk harm to yourself or patients. Yeah. So we need to be committed to safety. We need to...
So
there we go.
All the ODP students out there wondering why we spend hours teaching you law, ethics, guidance and stuff like that, that's why it's important.
Yeah. I could just picture you. I'm going to get that picture of you like Uncle Sam.
Me and you.
Committed to safety.
Yes.
Committed to care.
But you do get that, don't you, sometimes from students like, why are we sitting and going through more guidelines or more legislation or all this kind of stuff? It's because if we don't stick to them or we don't adhere to them or we don't follow those guidelines or legislation things, then what we're doing is extremely risky.
And it doesn't seem interesting, obviously, at the time because you want to get stuck into practicals or you want to actually be doing actual things you believe you're going to be doing every day, which is great and that's a good aspect of it. But you don't realise as time goes on, and obviously when you qualify, these skills of knowing the policies and the guidance embed your good practice all the time. It's like constantly feeding in, but people see it as quite separate, but it's the same thing. It comes together and makes you a safe practitioner.
And I think the thing about safety as well is it's not just about physical safety, it's about psychological safety in the environment, like knowing that you're in this safe space to practice, so that you can maintain your own mental health during that time and work as a team and share that responsibility to deliver a high standard of care for the patient, but then be safe in knowing that the decisions that was made was within the best interest for that patient. And you've got that aspect of psychological safety in that space because you have to trust each other. It's all about teamwork in the operating theatre. Like you've all got your own jobs to do that all lead into surgery. So for me, I think sometimes it's remembering that aspect of psychological safety as well.
Yeah. The absence of psychological safety is one of the big causes of errors, and people don't realise just how important it is. And if you don't feel safe and comfortable to put out your concerns to the team, then they go unheard, and at the end of the day, it can end in a bad.
And I think that sort of leads into one of my first questions around sort of like theatre culture effectively, is in what do you think influences the theatre culture in that ability to be able to speak up, and how do you think that that is connected to safety?
I think we always joke, isn't it, that there's the ODP-ness. It's the ODP-ness, okay?
Yes.
But it's that the people that are going into the role, the people that are working in these environments, kind of have that understanding of what the role is and what the environment is they're going to be working in, and kind of have that understanding of sometimes you might need to question or challenge hierarchy to ensure that there is that safety within that element. And I think most people walking into it, because there is this inherent risk in what we do, we have to be so aware of it and be able to challenge when we see something that we're able to. So all of us are able to easily talk to someone and question what they're doing in a professional manner.
I think hierarchy is definitely one of them, and I think either if you're a student or if you're newly qualified, you just don't feel like you have the confidence. It's like, well, they must know more than me, right? But that's not always the case. It can just be a simple human factors error.
Mm-hmm.
Someone could have just forgotten something, and you reminding them can change the course of something. So you should never be afraid to. It's easier said than done.
Yes.
I know, but
I always say there's a benefit in speaking up, whether you're right or wrong, because if you are right and you spoke up about it, you've potentially avoided harm to a patient. If you are wrong, that's an opportunity for you to learn, like, why were you wrong? What can you learn from this in the future? Or why did you think it was wrong in the first place? And why is this practice appropriate?
Yeah.
So, like, you're just going to gain something positive by speaking up.
I do feel that the theatre environment kind of leads itself to quite a flattened hierarchy, because we're all in the same uniform, we all look the same. Sometimes it's difficult to tell who is the anaesthetist, who is the ODP, who is the surgeon, like who's the scrub practitioner, because unless you have it written on your hat or you've got a badge on, you all look identical. So there is that kind of almost like pre-existing flattening of the hierarchy, because there isn't that instantaneous visual of it. But so I think that the culture in theatre does lend itself a little bit more to that sort of speaking up and being aware of it, compared to other places where you might not necessarily feel that way.
I mean, I think I wasn't around decades ago, but you hear of perhaps what it was like, 20, 30 years ago as an environment, and perhaps not always the best. And I think there's a lot of work happened in the last 10, 15 years of making it a more flattened hierarchy, which I think is really, really crucial. And I think that still needs to continue to be able to do that. But I think, I think even as I vividly remember this as a student, actually, when it was an anaesthetist about to give some antibiotics, and I thought that's penicillin, and I'm sure they said it was an allergy to penicillin. I can't remember how I phrased it, but anyway, and it was right, but it was feeling able to, like, there was no, well, who are you? You're just a student. You can't be telling me. Like, it was like they were very senior, now retired, and they were like, I'll just check, and then they were like, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I think that there is that. I think the newer generation of medics coming through have that kind of training as well, where it's kind of like it isn't all on you. I think before it used to be that, like, well, you're the surgeon, you're the anaesthetist, you have to be, where it's now, I think they get a lot more training in terms of working as a team and making sure that there is that understanding of listening to your ODP. I remember working with an anaesthetist who told every registrar and every SHO coming through anaesthetics, always listen to your ODP because they know what's going on. And that's kind of like, we kind of embed ourselves into being the theatre expert, and everybody rotating through, whether it be registrar, SHO, or even consultant, are coming into your environment, and you are actually the expert and the master in that area.
Yeah, and I think I say this to the students is, certainly as they get to the third year in qualifying, is you might find yourself working with, quite a junior on nights, not too long from now, and you might think you're inexperienced and you're the junior, but actually be surprised, and you might find yourself in a short period of time where you're not actually at all. You've got a lot of experience, and don't feel that sort of what's the word, the imposter syndrome of being the newbie. It's you're
Yeah, it could just be something as simple as they've come from different hospitals and don't know where something is, and you're the one that's going to be able to find it a little bit quicker and keep kind of it going that way. So it's just there's loads of little aspects that make us really important to that environment, and ourselves can make other people feel psychologically safe to speak up.
It's that courage and confidence, isn't it? And one of the things that I do think we try and embed now in our sort of training program is the ability to speak up, or the ability to understand that by speaking up you are effectively caring for the patient. And that's one of the things that we aim for. And I think a part of that I'm leading into my next question smoothly. Transition is around like how we can reflect on those experiences and how we can then make improvements. So my next question is like, what sort of role does reflective practice play in relation to safety and care within the profession? Which is a big question.
I mean, it's a crucial part, a massive part. It's almost the only way that we learn how to manage these instances of safety. It's reflective practice and taking, either near misses or even events that has caused problems or issues, and reflecting on that, learning from it, and making sure that those mistakes are not repeated in the past. I think every sort of thing that's been implemented based off a never event is a form of reflective practice that's then come into play. And I think probably all of us have had experiences where we might have forgotten to do something, or missed something which has caused an issue, which then we then go, I'm never doing that again.
And then that results in a change of more positive practice as well, or a way, because we always forget things, but there might be a way that you can then remind yourself because of how you reflect on it and what the outcome might have been. So it's always a positive thing to do, always.
I think one of my main ones, especially like from my aspect of practice, I remember when I first started practicing, I used to take the back to the ECG stickers off and not think too much about them. And then I remember reading the alert around how some had been found inside a patient's airway. And I was like, I should have really been focusing on where I was putting these. And it's that small change there, because I've reflected then on that evidence and my own practice. And what I've done is I've made changes to improve the safety of my own practice. And it's just that aspect of reflection, because sometimes I think students, we talk about reflection all the time at university. The students think, I'm never going to need to reflect again, and I'm like, oh, hold on, you will be reflecting for the rest of your career.
I think there's a difference though between, I think there is a little bit of difference in the academic reflections and what we ask from our students, and everyone reflects. Everyone, even if they're not in healthcare, you reflect on your day. You go home at the end of the day and you think about the things that you've done. How many times have you stayed awake going, oh my God, I can't believe I just said that to that person, or you make a fool out of yourself, or you said something wrong, or road rage where someone said something, you wish you could have just said something back, and you don't think about the great response until you're at home. That's all reflection. That's what we do. It's just that we try to get students to think about it in a more formal process, so that when it comes to patient safety, patient care, they are putting it in a way that is,
you can structure your reflection better then and kind of gain something from it, I think.
Rather
when
than
you look at what happened, what am I going to do, now what am I going to do? It's a really easy way to be like, reflecting on what's happened and how am I going to improve the future. It's just a simple
rather than getting stuck and ruminating on something. It gives you a framework to look for a resolution.
But I think that's difficult as a student to do that, because you're in placement for a short period of time, you're in a team for a short period of time, you aren't just doing anaesthetics or surgery, or mixing it up a little bit depending on how your placement is. Because I knew I reflected as a student, but I don't think it's until I was qualified that the real sort of reflection comes on. So I think, but it's giving the students a skill and a framework to be able to do that is what's really important.
I think that plays into the imposter syndrome as well. I think it's quite hard to reflect not well, that's probably accurately, if you suffer from imposter syndrome, because a lot of the time your reflections are skewed by thinking that I'm just a student, maybe I don't know as much as them, and it feeds into that narrative. But it's not, if you do have a bit of doubt about yourself, it is going to be hard to reflect at the same time. So I think getting external feedback at the same time as actually going through these reflective thoughts yourself is a good combination moving forward.
And it's good to ask for that feedback as well. When I was a student, and even now as a qualified, I will ask for feedback from staff members just to see how have I done today, is there anything that I could improve on. And what I do is I take that information and I'll reflect on it, and and I'm linking it back to the topic. But I think about, so if I make this change, how is it going to impact on care? How is it going to impact on safety? Because usually the moment I make that connection, and if there's any reason for it to connect to either of the two, I'm like, oh, I'm going to do it, aren't I?
Yeah.
That's what I want to do. I want to be a practitioner that strives for improving patient safety and improving patient care.
Yeah.
So how do you think we should teach ODP students? How do you think they should prioritise care and safety, especially when they're under pressure? How do we teach it at the moment, or what do you think we should be doing? Can I have a minute to think?
I mean, it's a difficult one to teach someone to care, because I think inherently you either care or you perhaps are less, you are more or less caring. I don't
or
know
you
whether
care,
that's-
but you don't know how to apply the care. Maybe in that scenario,
There is
could
that.
be either way.
There is that for sure. I think so, because it's not something I could have done when I was 18. I wouldn't have been ready to do this as a career at that younger age. I came into it, you know, as a mature student, and I was ready for that because I had different life experience and I was ready to do it. So yeah,
I do think it is dependent on long life experience, and we do have some students that are coming in maybe who are slightly older who do have that life experience, who sort of almost take to that element of our role quite quickly, whereas some of the others might struggle slightly to get like a footing in, or even just as simple as communicating and talking with the patient when they're at their most vulnerable, and just having that moment of connection with them to sort of develop that caring side of things. But I think most of the time when we do sort of deliver it tends to be when we're doing like our simulations and our practice-based stuff, because that is when we are probably going to be getting the most out of the students. Because I think we can all sit in a classroom and teach them how, talk to them about care, but actually implement it, like you're saying, and introduce it into a way. And I think it does. Some people struggle a little bit more than others. It's not necessarily that they don't care. It's just a case of not really knowing how to.
And also having the confidence as a student. You know, for example, there's so many ways that even as a student you can help, such as is the bed hug up? Have we got a blanket? Are they warm enough? Does that pillow look quite right? Now we're not expecting anyone to start, messing around with the airway, but just saying like, do you think that head could be just a little bit more neutral? Just there's a few things that you can do and pick up on, and kind of that gives that aspect of care without really having to do too much. Really,
I think you've hit the nail on the head there with something in relation to the confidence that you need to care in this sort of environment, because there's a lot of people there, there's a lot of eyes on you. You're not on your own, and you kind of you need that confidence, because it's those individuals that are quite confident, those students that are confident, that can then easily show care and compassion on a day-to-day basis. The ones that aren't as confident, that probably do step back. It's seen as, they're not caring, but they're just not confident to provide that care, because they are potentially a little bit frightened of it potentially not being correct or not being right.
And I suppose we, from the offset, we kind of say to students, be mindful about where you stand, what you touch, what you do when you go into this, because of like the sterile field that we have to maintain. So if they're walking into that environment going, I can't touch anything, I can't do anything, I can't stand in the wrong place, it's better for me if I just stand back in the corner and not get involved, then that's probably where that confidence kind of, so maybe in terms of, you asked about like how can we improve how we teach it, maybe that's the thing, instead of saying to students, be mindful about where you stand, what you do, what you touch, it's okay to adjust a pillow or move an arm, or cover a patient over if they look like they're exposed, or
hold a hand.
Like it's okay to do that, and it's okay to take a minute with your patient if they're very anxious in the anaesthetic room, and take a minute to speak to them before all this goes off, because yes, there's time pressures, but there's always time to be caring and compassionate to our patients.
And I think that then links back again to psychological safety, all the way back, because if this person who might not seem confident anymore might have been dismissed before, they might have said, oh no, they're fine. They might have just, due to time pressures, they might have not added in them aspects of care, and they've been like, I best not speak again because nothing came of it last time, I felt a bit silly. So it's just constantly feeds into it. So the more safe and open an environment is better for everybody.
Because I think that only really happens when you then become qualified, and then it's you doing it, and then you can give your own sort of spin on it. And I know I again sort of someone told me this, and I think it's a great little thing. Was like they called it the mum test, but you call it whatever you want, the loved one test. It was like, well, you take your patient, and if that was your mum, father, brother, grandparent, it doesn't matter, someone close to your heart, how would you want them to be treated?
Yeah, are you happy with what's happening?
Yeah, and if the answer is yeah, you're probably doing a good job. And if you're not sure, then question what that is. And it's not a bad yardstick to measure whether your care is.
And I think one of the things to sort of help with that is because it can become very easy sometimes. And one of the things I try and do within my teaching is not to refer to patients as their procedure. I think you can lose aspects of care by that. You remove that element of a human being.
Are we doing the lateral next?
Yeah. And it's really important. So, like within the teaching, what I try and do is if I say the patient's name, or if there's, for instance, a pseudonym or something like a case study that's based around them having that procedure, but then they've got all of this other medical history and this background that needs to be involved in that, because that's one way to improve the education.
I think that's where our ICC curriculum that's obviously developed at SHU and that we do is so important, because it kind of shows students the outside aspects of our patients, because sometimes you do only see someone come through the door. You might not even see that side if you're on the surgical side, because you might be in another room setting up equipment. You come in and all you're seeing is a piece of flesh on the table because everything else is covered over. So how can they then make that connection to them? Whereas the ICC stuff that we teach them is looking at that social element of what our patients come from, how they've developed, because everyone getting to this point has been through a life, has had situations, has got to this point of treatment. So there's other things that need to be considered on top of it.
And that's one of the things that we do. So the real answer to that is come to SHU.
I mean, it wasn't selling the advert.
Here you get to meet us.
Real life.
I'm expected to do so many autographs in September.
How famous? Yeah.
So moving on to my last question then. How do we maintain compassion, care and safety in a fast-paced, task-driven environment? What do you think are the barriers, or what have we done as practitioners that we've done it well, for instance? Or
I think what Jade said is the key, is little things like adjusting a pillow, positioning a patient, even things like if they have some kind of religious background, like make sure that is upheld. Some people come in with religious artifacts that they want close to them through that time. Make sure that's there. Don't put it on the side. Leave it on the side of the bed if you can. Give them that opportunity, because, like you said, you're being that person for that patient, and those little things don't take any time whatsoever out of our day.
No.
I think, I don't know whether this is a good analogy or not, but I'm going to make it. If you go, let's say you go out for something to eat and someone's looking after you, so if they look you in the eye and they have a smile and they seem to care a little bit, then that makes that whole experience a little bit better. And I do think a long time ago I was in sort of the service industry, hospitality industry, and to some extent that's what we are. We're there to make it. It's human. It's a human being who's more often than not absolutely terrified about what's going to happen, who is never been potentially in that environment before, or even if they have, it's still a frightening experience. It smells weird, it looks weird, we're all in pyjamas.
It's very bright.
It's very bright, it's quite cold.
It's never like
they're exposed in a gown. It's, and just, what do you like to be called? A holding of a hand, or a bit of general...
A smile.
A smile. And I think those, to me, they're the big things that actually make little things that make a big difference.
Yeah. I think it's quite difficult as well, because as a whole we talk about compassion and care for patients, but at the same time it is quite individualised depending on the patient who's coming in. For example, people with different cultures or religious beliefs. We've had patients before who obviously wanted to keep their headscarves on, as they should, and we've explained we'll do our absolute best to keep it on. If there's any chance that it might be something that gets on it, is it okay if we just move it a little bit? Yeah, that's absolutely fine. And then we always make sure it's completely back how it was at the end before we're all done. So we always make sure we're trying to maintain that dignity, but it's different for each patient that comes through, and it's about kind of asking them to get to know them a little bit before and working out what is the most important to them alongside just general care.
There's so many tiny tweaks that we can make to our practice that will make it individualised for each patient coming through those things. And that's
100%.
what we need to think about is that moment that they walk through, how can we support them to have the best experience.
One of the things I teach is that introduction, because what I remember an anaesthetist once said to me, like, the way that I greet patients is just really nice and welcoming. And I always teach now in my own practice, it's whatever you're doing, because we do work in a very fast-paced environment. Sometimes you've just got your patient round to PACU and the patient's then arriving for the next case and you might not have finished setting up. What I always say is whatever you're doing, whatever you're in the middle of, the moment your patient arrives, you stop what you're doing, you turn, you introduce yourself.
Yeah.
You say, hello, my name is.
Yeah.
And what you'll start to do is build that rapport from that moment, and it provides that avenue of care effectively.
And one of the things that, and it comes back to sort of maybe that confidence and imposter syndrome, is unfortunately sometimes in that first few years of placement, it might be a case of fake it until you make it situation. Even if you are not feeling the most confident in that environment, which all of us have probably been even in once we're qualified, is smiling, is going, right, yes, we can do this. We're the experts. We know what we're doing. We've got
We're
you.
the ones that meant to calm you down.
Yeah.
So we need to pretend to at least look like
we've got
everybody's
you.
feeling
We've
better.
got this. We can do this. This is what this is what we do. Trust in us, kind of thing. Because it's building that trust.
Little things this is a little bugbear of mine, so excuse me, but it's like when we talk to people in a medicalised way, I hate it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm just going to put these ECG, most people probably don't know what an ECG is.
Yeah.
Some might do, some might not. So I get it, you're trying to tell them what you're doing, that's fine, but you're just speaking a different language to them. So it's just I always try and get people to think how, just talk to them really simply and openly and try and unmedicalise everything.
These little stickers are going to monitor your heart to make sure that you're safe in the procedure.
But I think, but I also think that coming from a paediatric background, it's so natural to us to just use non-medical terminology and calling cannulas web shooters or butterflies.
So we used to have it that these were stickers, medals that they got, and then like the crocodile. So it was a crocodile, and this crocodile's magic, and it's going to tell you how many Christmas presents you get each. And it was always funny where you go, well, let's see how many Christmas presents Santa's going to bring you, and the parents' eyes were like, what? And when it comes up at like 99, and you're like, whoop, you're going to get 90. Crocodile says you're going to get 99 presents this Christmas, or I used to do it again. You read the room, you ask them what they're into, and then you can say, oh, well, do you play football? Oh, yeah, great. Well, this is going to tell you how many goals you're going to score, or you play a little game.
It goes back to the individualised tailoring. How to speak. It's just, I think, as well as students, people kind of overthink it all the time. Like, what should I say? How are you? Are you one? Yes. Got
Small
any plans
talk.
this year? Just small talk, and I know we all hate it, but it opens a door for big talk.
Yeah, big talk.
Big talk.
No, I love that. That is great. That's 100% it. Small talk leads to big talk.
And I think what you said, read in the room,
Yeah.
because some patients, don't want to talk.
Yes.
And don't want to engage.
Don't want
And that's fine.
don't want.
So you have to read that and then just act appropriately. And it's not all about having a laugh and being behind. It's like you've got to give your patient as best you believe that what they want.
Some people want that professionalism, right? I'm going to be putting the ECG dots on, and that medical side of what we do, whereas others want the laugh and the joke and the stories and the things.
Some people don't want to hear about anything you do it.
Yes.
Just get on
Just
with
do
it.
it.
Just get on with it and have a
Knock me
look
out.
over here. And it's like, okay, I still might just tell you the odd thing. Just general consent, but I won't go into too much detail.
So I think we're going to move on now to final thoughts then in relation, now that we've explored the topic for National ODP Day, or Committed to Care, Committed to Safe Day. I think I've said that in the right order. Imagine if it's the opposite way around. So what's your final thoughts to that, from that? What's your takeaways from this podcast?
I think it's everybody can show care. It doesn't have to be a big display. It doesn't have to be. You don't have to have been qualified for so many years. You just have to care. You just have to go in and go, would I become feel like that? Probably not. Is there something we can do to help? Just really just ask yourself sometimes, and then go back to that self-reflection. Is it feel the skin a bit cold? Maybe we need a bear hug up. Maybe we need some. Just asking yourself these questions all the time, no matter how long I've been doing it. I always had a little checklist at the end of when I'd put a patient on. I'd come in and I'd be like, yeah, who was on? That's on. Diaphragm is connected.
Yeah.
All monitoring's fine. We've got a temp. I still would run through it because we're all supposed to be getting things sometimes. And I think putting things in place, structure, framework, can just really improve our care to patients.
And I think that we teach in a structure and a framework. So stick to the structure and the framework. And if you don't forget things, that's really good.
Yeah.
I think, like kind of what Jade alluded to, we all have it in us to do those small elements of care, which then leads to the big impact for our patients. And in terms of the safety aspect of our job, I think it's just inherent in what we do, everything we do, because of the amount of potential risk that is there for them, that we are so rigid in what not rigid, but like structured in what we do, that it means that we have that safety built in.
Yeah, and I think I was going to say, I've been very lucky to work in some good teams, but it's a culture thing as much as anything else, and you have a role, you have a professional responsibility to set that culture or to work towards that culture, and if you're in a great environment, that's a lot easier than perhaps if you're not, but that doesn't mean that you still can't set that standard. And I think that's something that I think for us teaching students is you want to give them the tools to be able to do this, and then they can find their own way, but also give them a standard and go out and set it. And I suspect, I don't know, over the decades, the levels of care and safety and compassion and empathy, etc., as I'd like to think improved somewhat. And I think it will forever, hopefully, improve so long as we keep doing what we do.
If you see something you don't like, say it.
Oh, speak up. And I think that's where I was going to go. My sort of takeaway is, by speaking up and having that courage and confidence to speak up, you will be providing a high standard of care. You will be providing safe practice. And I think that it's so important for our everyday practice. Question it, speak up, advocate. And I think that's all the buzzwords that I wanted to say. So, to sort of finalise it, I guess, happy ODP Day. National ODP Day, 14th of May. I was just thought, a party poppers. I should have had party poppers. Ready?
Obviously, after this is why it's so.
And you've got a puppy brain. Jesus Christ, we're never going to get half an hour of content. Shut up! Thank you so much for listening to us at the ODP Cast. We hope that you've enjoyed it, and please remember to save, add it to your library so that you can keep up to date with us. To get involved, follow us at ODP Shoe across all major social media networks. Whether you're listening on your way to work, whether you've got a coffee, or you're just waiting for the patient to be brought down to the anaesthetic room, don't forget to give us a like so that you can see what we're up to next time on the ODP Cast.